Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this scrutiny meeting for October. I'd like to welcome officers and cabinet members as well, and also I'd like to introduce to my right George Darby, who is a T-level student from Broadstairs College. He's here doing a work placement with Democratic Services until the spring next year, so he'll be coming to help with some of our meetings, so we give him a warm welcome. And I'm told he does have his own email account, so we can give him a few things to work on if we feel that way. Okay, item B, the fire alarm procedures. Fire alarm procedures are as follows. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate down the offices down the main staircase opposite the lifts in the foyer. Assembly in Hawley Square on the green. Officers will assist you and advise you when it's deemed safe to return to the chamber. Would everyone present please ensure their mobile phones are turned to silent. They are not used to make or receive phone calls whilst this meeting is in progress. Please note this meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. The meeting will also be recorded and subsequently broadcast on the internet. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? Okay, I've had no members wish to speak under 20.1 and no requests for public speaking, so we'll move straight on to the agenda. Apologies for absence. So I've had one apology, and that's from Councillor Moore. Any other apologies?
Apologies from Councillor Pope.
Thank you. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? And that's a no. Moving on to item number 3, the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of September 2025. To approve the minutes of overview of the Scrutiny Panel meeting held on the 16th of September 2025. A copy is attached to the agenda pack. Hope we've all had a read. Councillor Scobie.
I don't want to be that person in the comments on the minutes, but I'm going to be. I've asked at previous meetings how our comments and recommendations are communicated to Cabinet. And I assumed that as per the rule book, the only things that could really be, or the Constitution, let's say, the only things that can be communicated across are things that have been proposed, seconded and agreed by the panel. Now, on the agenda for the Cabinet meeting last month, the section around asset disposal, where we had quite a lively conversation, it actually says, the panel spent some time discussing the proposed disposal, and members of the panel raised a number of issues, including concerns about the access road to the site, how potential community benefits, and the Broadstairs and St Peter's potential interest in the depot site. None of that was actually proposed or seconded. There were certainly comments that people made, but also coming to this meeting, a couple of those comments aren't even in the minutes of the meeting. So I think something's got lost here, and we've got to make sure that if what we're sending to Cabinet that goes into their agenda for the following week should only be things that we as a panel have agreed, via proposed, seconded and voted on, and shouldn't be commentary. Because my concern is, and you remember this a few months ago, we were talking about it and one member said, oh, I'd like my comments noted. And then that one person's comments then ends up in a Cabinet agenda, which I don't think's right. You know, we should be voting on this as a panel. So it is about the minutes for that, but I just want some clarification, I think, of that process and making sure that we are capturing what actually happened in the meeting and not just comments of individual members that wasn't voted upon or follow procedure.
That's a fair point. I mean, there was a lot said in a very short period of time at the last meeting. I think we had trouble with the recording. I think Emily, I spoke to Emily trying to make sure we got it right for the recommendations, and I believe that what we put forward was correct representation of what was said. Sorry, Nick.
Yeah, the recommendation is the correct thing. Yeah, there should be less commentary moving forwards.
So, can I have a proposed please for those minutes? Looking at you. And a seconder, Councillor Bright, and do we all members agree? Excellent, thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 4, which is the review of the overview and scrutiny work programme. Any questions we'd like to make or comments we'd like to make? I know you asked me something last time. Do you want to bring that up now?
Yeah, and it's maybe not for a decision this evening, but the comment that I made to Councillor Fellows and spoke to Councillor Green about was when this current working party on poverty finishes, I was questioning the value of us starting a new working party when the reality is in the last year of the council it's all going to be about local government reorganisation. I imagine most of the Cabinet agendas are going to be making decisions around stuff. I understand from talking to the leader that's probably not till later in the year next year, so there may be that there's one more working party we want to do, but I was going to suggest that officer time that we've got could actually go into maybe having a sub-working group scrutinising what is going through Cabinet in terms of local government reorganisation, rather than us looking at a particular project. Because I think it's going to be very hard for a panel of this size to be looking at every issue that's coming up, and it may be that we as a panel want to direct a sub-working party or a working committee, whatever we want to call it, into looking at specific elements. Maybe there was a concern that we had, and we might want to use those resources we've got. I think the key things would be terms of reference need to be really tight, because you can't cover everything. Secondly, we need to be clear about officer resources. It can't become something that's going to suck lots of resources in. And I think third of all, we've got to make sure it's not trying to direct policy or trying to create something massive. But I do think there is a role that we have in scrutinising what Cabinet's going to be doing, because with local government reorganisation, there will be decisions they've got to take. And so some of that time might be better spent.
So do you propose a small group of councillors led by yourself who report back here once a month as a particular agenda item on local government reorganisation, and so we can discuss briefly what's been going on? Is that the sort of thing you...
No, I'm not putting myself forward, first of all. No.
I thought
No,
it was a neat move, you tried.
No, I'm suggesting it's something that you, as chair, and maybe Councillor Green as vice chair, take and talk with officers and maybe come back, because you know it takes us 3 months to set one of these things up anyway. And so if we start thinking now, I mean, the poverty working group hasn't reported back yet. If we start thinking now about what that might look like, I think that might be the best use of resources for the last year.
I was thinking that would be something that would work alongside that. The scrutiny reviews would be one thing, and this, I mean, I think Colin might have something to say.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And, very much to sympathise about officer resources. I mean, the trouble with this is none of us have ever done this before, so exactly what's going to happen and when is something that we're not entirely clear about. I suspect until about June, July next year, when we know the chosen geographical option, there'll be a lot of marking time. Could be scope for doing more work in that time. After that, though, we'll be full speed ahead and probably having to second people into the new council arrangements to do all the work that's needed to set them all up. So I think after next summer, officer resources will be really stretched, because we'll have to continue to deliver our services and support the new unitaries. So doubling some people's workload, weekend and evening work and all that kind of stuff. So you're absolutely right, I think, about the resource issue. The extent to which Cabinet will be taking decisions, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm most concerned about the resource. So if you could plan up to next summer and then leave it open after that, that would be great.
We can go away and have a chat about.
Councillor Davis.
I didn't even breathe it. It's my electric personality. Yeah. Very interesting what Councillor Scobie had to say, because the LGR is the thing that, and as Colin said, we don't know exactly what's coming down the road. Likewise, we don't know the hoops and so on that are going to be set to jump through. So it's important that there's some form of flexible, quick reacting way to discuss and scrutinise these. So I'm not saying we can necessarily come up with the solution right here, but I think a voluntary working group from this panel, or perhaps coordinated by this panel, because there are members not on O&S that would be very keen to contribute to just monitoring and preparing, if you like, areas for as part of a scrutiny process. And by doing that, that can alleviate we could have an informal working body that then brings that through and manages it. So I think it's really important that we address that, and I'd certainly be happy to be part of something along those lines. So.
Councillor Green.
I think we were told at the last meeting by Finance that local government reorganisation is already influencing their thinking, so I think it's appropriate that we do have a look at that.
Okay, so we'll have a think about that over the next month, and then we'll come back with some ideas next time. And yeah, as I say, recruiting people from outside of scrutiny would be a good idea.
Well, it gives that way it helps the democracy, because out of the 56 councillors, there are those that won't even know what it means, and there are those that really want to get heard or have got issues. So.
Okay, David, do you have anything? Oh, sorry, Councillor Butcher.
Yeah, I was just going to add that when we had the tourism working party, we did have 1 or 2 meetings where we had an actual core working group. Then we had 1 or 2 meetings where we also invited people who weren't on the working group to contribute. So I think that would be something that's also worth considering.
Absolutely. Councillor Scobie?
I would just say I don't think there's any rush with this.
No.
And I think the resource we have allocated from Democratic Services is only for one working party at a time anyway. So I don't think anything can be done until Councillor Green's sort of working group finishes. So this is almost putting a sort of a line in to say, right, instead of us planning for something next, I know we talked about transport links and stuff like that, all good stuff, but realistically, I think the last year of the council is going to be all local government reorganisation. And to Colin's point, everybody's going to be full on with this. So our role as scrutiny in this is to make sure that we're looking at performance and we're looking at risks and we're looking at opportunities to add our voice to that on things that may be missed. And this feels like the ultimate time, which you've got to do that in a way that doesn't draw resource in wherever it needs to be, or add more pressure to officers who are already going to be juggling lots of stuff. So yeah, we've got time.
Yeah, excellent. David, did you want to speak about your review at the moment?
Yeah, just to say it's slow progress, but we've now refined the questions that we want to ask. The questionnaire that's going out to section heads, it should have gone out by now, I hope it has. And we're going to use pretty much the same questionnaire to quiz outside bodies and members, and that should follow on smartly behind.
Anybody else?
Do you want me to just come in on that? So just to follow up on what Councillor Green was saying, is that we're working closely with the Council's web team to develop the first of the 2 of the 3 surveys. It is proving a little bit more complicated privacy-wise this time around, I think, than previous surveys that we've done for other working groups and other scrutiny reviews. Each survey does now require a privacy statement as well, and so that is taking slightly longer than it has been in the past, but we are continuing to work on it as fast as we can, whilst all following the appropriate GDPR rules.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on the review of the work programme paper, which talks about the next topics in line. And one of them is combating littering, improving recycling, blah, blah, blah. One of the things that we haven't picked up on, you know what I'm going to say here, when we're looking at the outcomes of previous reviews, is the working party that you led on coastal waste, the recommendations of which have disappeared into the ether. So perhaps we could get people together who were on that group and perhaps talk with officers about picking up some of those things, rather than starting again and doing another review, some of the recommendations of which may well end up being rather similar to those recommendations that got lost along the way. That's all. Thank you.
Item 6 on the agenda tonight is review of the recommendations coming from previous scrutiny reviews.
Yes, but it doesn't pick up on that one, because that was prior to the cut-off date that has been used for this. I'm not sure why. I rather expected it might be in there, but it's not. So it needs to be picked up again, I think. Thank you.
Okay. So do we all agree to note the work programme? Excellent. Okay, moving on to item number 5, which is the Cabinet Member presentation. And I'll call on Councillor Alban to make his presentation. Good evening.
Thank you for inviting us along. Thank you, Chair and members. Just to point out that I have my glamorous assistant Mr. Elmer, who will be assisting me this evening, and pointing me in the right direction should I go off-piste. So,
Good luck.
Wish me luck.
so without further ado, we shall move on. Right. The main point of this was to give you a tincture of what happened in relation to our summer season from the perspective of our cleansing department and the staff. As we all know, it was a hot summer this year, and it was an extremely busy time for our coastal areas and obviously for our staff. The total amount of waste collected from beaches and promenades was over, as you can see there, 1,100 tonnes of waste. I mean, that's a hell of a lot of waste. So that just shows you the amount of people that we've had down around our coast. Although some bins, as it says there, were reported as being overflowing, and that was really because of the amount of people that we had. There was not the major event happening that required a statement from us like we had to do in 2024. Right. The big news, as it says there, and you might think this is a tiny improvement, but on the whole it's not. So we've finally seen some positive movement in our recycling rate. The long-standing figure that we've had for years has been 35% and hasn't moved. However, this year, so far it's improved up to 36%. It's actually higher than that, it's 36.9, but we can't put 37. As I said, although it seems like it's only a tiny increase, it just shows the progress as the rates has been static over recent years. We obviously know that further improvement will be needed to ensure that we retain environment funding in the coming years. The main driver of this increase, as it says there, was the introduction of large mixed recycling bin housing and the changes to the street recycling in general, both of which were introduced this summer. In relation to our proms and that, the new bin houses were not additional bins, they were replacements from the freestanding ones that we had. There were a few teething issues, especially in relation to the height of them, that kids couldn't recycle and stuff like that. Anyway, we've managed to get around that and get over that. And as it says there, were some subtle adjustments to their location as well, because people were saying they were in the way, they couldn't see in the beach and blah, blah, blah. However, we're happy to say that they were a huge success. The large size making it clear where the people can recycle and makes recycling easier. Lessons were learnt from previous years, and additional bins for the summer were put out earlier, which seems to help avoid a big shock at the first busy weekend. And I think I can say normally our summer would be June, July and August. That's the main part of the summer, but we were actually ready for the summer in May, ready to go out, and we continued that until the end of September. As you said, on a typical summer's day, I wanted you to see how we deploy the staff at beaches. It says there we have static cleaners, 2 shifts between 6 to 10 a.m. and 2 to 6 p.m. And they're responsible for litter picking and bin emptying on the beaches. On the beaches, were 2 on Margate, 2 on Broadstairs, 1 on Ramsgate and 1 on Botany Bay. Bin empty, beach bin emptying with a cruise driver and assistant, beach squad, driver and assistant, clean promenades and non-manned beaches. Toilets, although this is not waste, well I suppose it is in a way, but we got static cleaners responsible for cleaning and bin emptying in toilets and immediate area. That's one in Margate, one in Broadstairs and one in Ramsgate. The summer issues, as it says as the headline there, does cause us resource issues. The reality is the amount budgeted for the summer months is not sufficient to cover the ever increasing demand that we're having. And if we get another summer next year, like we've had this year, you know, that's something that we are looking at. And the first request of these resources to be deployed in any form came in April, as I've said, and we didn't stop until September. And the toilets on the Margate I've sounded like President Trump there. Toilets on the Margate Harbour were beautiful. One of the team was verbally abused and chased by a member of the public when closing the toilets. This led to us employing a security firm to close these particular toilets, and that's an outgoing, a cost of which we didn't really perceive. We have had that problem first summer back after COVID, and people just don't like the toilets closed at any times, and they were moaning and groaning, and both physical and verbal abuse to our staff, which they do not deserve. The summer issues continued. Obviously events, especially at Dreamland, as with previous years, creates large public turnout for the events, and the summer shows at Dreamland had an impact on the following morning clean-up. Although it should be said, as it says there, this was an improvement on the previous years, we could still improve that further, and that's something else that we will be looking at. I just wanted to say this about early mornings. The last bin emptying cleaning, it takes place in the evening, so some of it will be up to 10 o'clock. Then not visited again until the following morning. And then they are visited in order. So it would be the main beaches first and then the others as we go through the day. That leaves extended periods where waste can build up, generating early morning complaints from dog walkers. So if they're out at 6 o'clock, our staff are out there about 6 to 7, depending on where these dog walkers are who are making the complaints. But I can say that all of the promenades, all of the beaches are cleaned, litter picked, etc., for when normally our first visitors or residents would go down on the beach. I just wanted to give you some other parts of our service chair, just to say which are possibly of general interest to the members. There are a number of significant achievements by the cleansing team, which cabinet approval to implement changes to around a third of the properties in the district. We have changed our primary fuel source, as you're already aware, from standard diesel to HVO fuel. This means that the CO2 product produced by our fleet has been reduced by over 90%. 25 bin houses installed around the coastline. There's a leafing trial which we started last year, mainly in Broadstairs as one place, conducted a small-scale trial of community engagement by giving residents who asked for them leafing bins, and then the locals could come and fill that one bin up, and then we would go and empty them. And of course that increases our recycling rate. We do have a number of challenges. the successes of the summer were achieved against the backdrop of these challenges. Work is ongoing to improve facilities at Manston Road Depot, which is taking officer time and requires funding. All that work has been agreed and financially planned, and that is mainly to do with the environment, with the requirements from the Environment Agency. We've had to restructure the management team because of some staff leaving, and there were delays in recruitment, mainly because the people that we picked, the staff that we picked want to be kept by their own employer, so it was a longer time for them to come. So, but putting the measures in place to reduce the documented overspend by the service for the next financial year as well. So we're really working hard on that with finance to get our overspend down. And that, members, is the end of the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. Excellent. Members, hands up. Councillor Crittenden.
Thank you. I noticed that you mentioned about the complaints about the bins being full first thing in the morning, having been emptied the night before. To what extent do we think that this is domestic waste from households in the area using public litter bins, which I know has been a problem in the past, and how are we following up on that as an issue?
Well, these particular issues are what I said in there is mainly responsible happening on the promenades off the beaches, the main beaches, and the likelihood of that is that people go down in the dark, they go after the time, after 10 o'clock, they light fires on the beach, they have barbecues on the beach, etc., which they shouldn't be doing. But obviously we're not there 24/7. So that's the normal issues that we get. All I can say is if people notice the bins in our town centres, let's say, are overflowing in the mornings, and you can see whether there is household waste in it, then please report that. But we will get down there during our daily rounds, and they will be cleared. They will be emptied. That's all I can advise you of.
So what are we doing about following up on domestic waste in bins?
So if and when our crews, or it is reported to us that there's quite obviously, I don't know, someone's put, I don't know, look over there, but dog food pouches and things in the bin, and it's quite obviously not street waste, we encourage the crews to report that back. If there's some clear evidence, and that's the whole thing, to having some evidence to back it up, like letters and things like that, then we can speak to the enforcement team to try and take some action, or, I mean, take action sounds quite extreme, at least discuss and speak to the residents about using the waste services they should do. So it's all about the feedback that we get, and then we try and follow it for as much as we can from there. All right.
If I can just come back on that, Chair, if I may, just to say, know the issues we've had in Ramsgate High Street, where we've got Airbnbs and stuff like that, and we've come out and they've left and put all their rubbish on the pavement, or put them in the bins, which they should be paying for. You have been reported that to our street scene enforcement, and have taken action and stopped the Airbnbs doing that. So I think that's one important part. But this is where we have to have the joined up thing, because we don't deal with enforcement. That comes under a different portfolio. But I think that's where we show that we are working across the council to get these things done. And the other problem is we can't stop it unless you stand outside. And if you're willing to do that for 24 hours a day, Councillor Crittenden, and I'll be happy to see you there. Thank you.
I will be more than happy to join you there, but maybe it is something that we should think about a little bit more often with spot checks. And I know that means working across with other departments, just other than what you're the Cabinet member for. but maybe that's something that could be looked at, because we know it happens.
Councillor Curry.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Steve, for your presentation. With regard to the beach toilets, could you tell us what time they actually are closed? And if a security firm does close them, could we ask them to close the toilets later? Because if we're paying them to close them anyway, maybe we could leave some of these toilets open a bit later. Thank you.
Matt's going to answer that.
Yeah, so the latest we get there is 8 o'clock, and a bit like Steve mentioned in the presentation, we've got one or sometimes two crews doing it, so it's the wave effect by the time they go out, and we do stagger it to make sure that the ones that are done latest are the most popular ones. So the Harbour Arm in particular is one of them. The other Margate toilets, Ramsgate, obviously speaking to people that know this sort of thing, and in particular the one where we did get the security firm to close it on the Harbour Arm, to lessen the tensions, I think it's safe to say, that occurred there, we did push that later. So I think off the top of my head, I've not got it in front of me, we were pushing it till 9, 10 o'clock for that one, because as you say, it wasn't our staff and they were a security firm, we were paying for it. That's obviously there was an additional cost to that.
Thanks, Matt.
Right.
Councillor Green.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Steve. I think we learnt last time that the overspend was largely due to increased use of contract staff. So what are you looking at to try and bring it down?
Yeah, I think as part of the, as I said in the presentation, we are looking at the issues that we have with the overspend. A lot of that is agency staff that we have to get in when our staff are off sick or on holiday, etc., etc. It's a difficult balancing act. Obviously, our main priority is to get our residents' waste bins emptied. That's the main priority for us. So that's where our resources will mainly go into. So if we have staff off, we have to drag them off from somewhere else who can then assist on the trucks, etc. We are looking at that. We will be looking as well in relation to, we've got next week, I think I've got the our Star Chamber process which we're going through, and there's issues there that we will be looking at whether we can go for more money, because the way we're looking at it, I should say, it's not just me, obviously, is we need to investigate how many agency staff we get that we take on. Can we take, how much is that costing? Can we then take on permanent staff for cover, who we can then use elsewhere? I think that, and so that is a thing that is part of what we will be looking at. It is a complex issue. It's not one that's just dead straightforward. Oh, why are you spending this? Why are you spending that? At the end of the day, you know as ward councillors what the pressure that you're put under, with residents saying we want this, we want that, we want the toilets open 24/7. Why aren't they open? Why aren't they all open during the winter? Because my auntie needs to have a pee when she walks her dog and everything like that. And so, you know, they're the things that we have to try and deal with and try and get our resources in the right place. So it is a problem. It is an issue, Councillor Green, and that is an issue that we are currently working on with finance. And if Matt will come in.
Yeah, so to pick up on a few things Steve said there, yes, there is a big overspend on agency, but like he did say, it's looking at the areas in which that overspend has come. we're talking about the summer season, we use agency staff in the summer season. The longer that season extends, the more pressure is put on us. So that's just one element of it. There is other things that we're looking at through sickness, bank holiday working, various different things. In answer to your direct question, what are we doing about it? I now have the pleasure of meeting with Matt and a cohort of people from finance and directors and chief execs to explain and look for answers for this next financial year. We've got some things in the pipeline that we think will help drive that overspend down, and it's a case now of delivering upon that. I think as well the key to dealing with the problem is fully understanding the problem. And again, as mentioned in the presentation, we restructured our management team. We've now got someone whose almost sole focus is on looking at data and analysing what we do and how we do it and with what staff we do it with. So getting a clearer picture on where that overspend is coming at almost a granular detail, we see as the first step to actually dealing with the problem.
Thank you.
Yes, sure.
There is, of course, another way, and that is to up the budget to cover for everything that's the overspend. But then that would mean cutting right off other stuff that other areas need to actually do. So I think I might raise that Star Chamber and on Monday. I'm not quite sure. So I can raise it, but I won't get very far. But that is obviously an option. So I just wanted to say that as well. Thank you.
So it's not a case of overspend, more of a case of an under budget. Is that what you?
I would say that, Chair. Yes.
Yes, Councillor Green.
Yeah, I'm glad that you are looking at the balance between employed staff and contract staff and whether that is a factor. I think that's important.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. There's no doubt that despite the difficulties, things have been better this year, and thanks to all concerned. The big concern for so many is, of course, the overspend. What are your expectations in terms of reining that, or and getting things back on an even keel? Do you believe it's inflated at the moment? Because, of course, we don't know the second quarter's outcome, but it's been busiest time of year. Do you believe there'll be a commensurately lower effect of that on the rest of the financial year, or is this trend something that we should really be concerned because it's accelerating, or have we seen the worst of it?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Davis. That's an important point. We've been looking at what's happening. We've already reduced the overspend by 100,000. So if we can carry on in that frame, I don't think we're going to get the overspend completely down yet. But I mean, that's something that we'd have to achieve over the next year or so. But yeah, obviously we'll work on it with our colleagues as hard as we can.
Councillor Rattigan.
Thanks for the presentation, Steve. Going back to what Councillor Crichton was saying, I see a big problem down sort of in my area in Cliftonville and into Margate of commercial properties using the bins for the, when other businesses we have to pay for commercial waste. Are we doing anything to sort of, like we're saying, to sort of check that, or is there anything we could put onto the website so members of the public could report businesses for because it's the same as fly tipping. Just another thing with commercial bins, I know Councillor Curry sort of be aware of this. We've there's been a trend along along North Down Road where new businesses are opening with no storage facility for their bins. So the bins are outside, the big large bins are outside the shop, and they're piling up. And one instant, one of the shops on there reported about 15 times that for weeks on end there'd be sort of piles of rubbish until. Is that something I don't know if that's part of your sort of remit to look at as well?
Yeah, so again, it's joined up. We need to make sure we're joined up fully with the enforcement team. Sort of poverty, I guess, but we are obviously a small district and a small team. So the more reports we can get and we'll then direct our resources there. We have seen misuse of commercial properties using public bins, and if we see it, then we do act upon it. But there's obviously a limit to what we can do. Is the thing. North Down Road as well. Totally agree, and I know Councillor Curry's hating me at the moment because I'm trying to get back to him to get the issues down there sorted as best we can. So we are aware of it, and it's a case of and I don't want to use it as an excuse, but we're spinning so many plates, and trying to get round to do kind of a bit of everything is the real task. So we are aware of it, and we will deal with it. And in Cliftonville, and also with Councillor Austin and Wing behind you, we've had other bins on the highway that we need to deal with as well.
And then one quick one. Any update on the other Margate toilets? The underground ones?
It's all in due process. I'm not sure if the planning application's in yet. Might be aware of that? Yeah, please do.
Yeah, if I update on that, and I was just going to come back on your other point as well, Councillor. So yeah, the Margate toilets are going out to tender next year. So the plan is for them to be constructed next year as well. So it's the refurbishment of the subterranean bit, and then the toilets on top as well, the accessible ones. Just coming back to the point about commercial businesses using street bins for litter or for waste. I would encourage that to be reported. So people can report fly tipping on the website, but they can also report where they think that's happening. We have done work on North Down Road before to look at whether businesses have commercial licence in place for waste, because it is a problem, and it's been a particular problem around North Down Road, I know, and I've sort of done ward visit at North Down Road fairly recently and seen firsthand some of the issues there. I think the message for ward councillors and for all councillors is to encourage reporting of that so that we understand the picture and we can get the enforcement teams to the right places.
So, years ago, this was about sort of 12 years ago when I had a newsagent. Every year we'd get a letter and we'd have to prove to the council that we had a waste thing. Is there any? Do you know why that's just out of interest? Why that sort of stopped? Why that's not an ongoing thing?
It is still the case, yeah. As part of your licence, you need to be able to prove that you've got sufficient waste management arrangements.
Councillor Austin.
Just as well to say, by the end of this month in Cliftonville, we'll have our new electric sweeper, which is with the ban. Obviously, don't go around on its own, like on a little one of those going around the high street. But so part of that process is that we can always ask the sweeper to look as it's going along in the bins, and that will then be. We got one to come in Ramsgate and one to come in Broadstairs. So that will be a Margate, yeah. So we'll be doing that. Yeah, that'll be so. Hopefully we can take that on board like that.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Alban. Picking up on the points that Councillor Crittenden and Councillor Rattigan made, I mean, we took Mr Humber and Mr Porter on a charming tour of commercial bins out on the street in Ramsgate, and my understanding is that not only should businesses be proving that they have a commercial waste licence, but they should also be proving that they have somewhere to keep their bins, and they should have a variety of different types of bins that they can choose from, so that if they don't have room for a great big Paladin bin, they have to have several smaller ones, and they have to get them into their own curtilage. And we have not been enforcing that, and as a result we have lots more problems with fly tipping out there, because people see a bin and they think, oh great, I'll just stick my fridge at the side of it, etc., etc. So stronger enforcement of what people should actually be doing and have been told they should be doing when they first take on their premises, I think could help us all enormously and could help improve our areas. And it's certainly something, by the end of this council term, by the time I finish, I want to have none of those commercial bins in all the places that we took, Mr Humber and Mr Porter. Picking up on domestic waste, I know we had some discussion about the landlord event recently and about getting people along to that, and about the waste team and the enforcement team engaging with managing agents, because they are very often the ones who give out, who make sure that the information goes to tenants, whether that's long-term tenants or whether that's Airbnb tenants. And some of that information, we know from our experience in Cornhill and elsewhere, is either inadequate or completely wrong. So we need to be dealing as best we can, and again I appreciate the difficulty with a small team, of that, getting that liaison, because those managing agents can be our friends in making sure that the right information goes out to people living in those properties, and that they know that it's not the thing to do to shove your eggshells and whatever in the street bin. Yeah, and my final thing was on the fly tipping and reporting of those sorts of things, because we have had some of our regular litter pickers who've got fed up of reporting fly tipping because they get the report that says we haven't found anything in this location. And I know we've got people now who are using the 3 words description, and I understand that that is more effective in getting exactly the right location. So is that what you would recommend now? That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously we spoke about this quite a bit at the litter forums, and what 3 words is a good alternative, but what we need to do is make sure that the official system that we use is up to scratch and is working correctly. That's something that we need to work on with the data team, I forget what the official title, but the techie people that deal with that sort of thing is their official term, I think. But yes, we need to get that up and running to make it easier to report that commercial abuse of bins by commercial properties, so on and so forth. There is so much, and I guess the more we can engage with the public and groups such as the ones that you two are obviously such a strong part of, that we effectively expand our team, because then we've got more eyes and ears on the street reporting back to us. So it's kind of our job to make sure that those lines of communication are as efficient as possible, I guess.
If I can come back in there, Chair, just you know, let's face it, humans ain't perfect, and humans will dump waste wherever they want to, and they don't, some of them, as we know, don't care. And we can never legislate for that. We can never put anything in place for that. But people will always do that. All we can do is the best that we've got, and to try and make things better, which we will continue to try and do. Thank you.
Councillor Wing.
Report, Steve.
On a positive, and Cornhill, you know, it can be so negative because I walk past there every day, and sometimes I walk round it just to avoid it, because I thought I don't want to get angry. Although we are producing a Cornhill calendar for 2026, but I think there's 69,000 houses in is it 69,000 households? So, you know, each of those households gets a collection weekly, so that's 70,000 times 52, I can't do the maths. But there's an incredible number of bins collected across the whole of Thanet. And really, there's just a small number that are missed. And I think our biggest problem isn't maybe not our household waste and collection. Occasionally my bin gets missed, but I think it's because I have such a small amount, they don't think there's anything in my seagull bag. So I've started trying to leave it out. But you know, sometimes we mustn't beat ourselves up, because actually the service is working and bins, generally speaking, don't get missed. But I think our biggest problem is we are creating our own problems. So I first got involved with big bins as the ones on Waitrose, which were completely blighting one of the main routes into town. There's a cycle thing there that could never be used. And then we put one of our own bins there. So there were 3 commercial bins, and then one of our own big bins arrived. So I think I did approach TDC and got nowhere. So I went to Kent. It's their highway. So I went to Paul Vallack and said, we've got commercial bins on the highway. I've had 2 reports of members of the public falling over the waste that was dumped around it. 2 of them were charity bins. And they just told us to move them. I think they told TDC the bins have got to go. So, of course, the commercial bins end up on Cornhill, which makes that situation worse. Our one disappears. But the whole of that bit there, once we've got the graffiti removed, is now wonderful. So the commercial bins and our own Paladin bins, which are on the KCC highway, shouldn't be there. And I've actually, every area I visit, I go onto their council website. So I looked at Waltham Forest, where I was born, and I started looking around. There are no large bins, Paladin bins of Waltham Forests, or commercial bins on the street. They're not allowed there. They're stopped. So we have got a massive problem, because we've allowed big commercial bins to be on KCC highway. KCC are clear, because I asked for clarification, and I got an email back that they shouldn't be there, and that they should. And even I think I even googled government legislation that said businesses need to keep their bins within their own curtilage. In Waltham Forest, they can't even be seen, so they've got to screen them in some way. Now, it's a massive problem, and I think Cornhill is going to be the one that is going to lead the way on this, because the commercial bins have been told to go. And now some of the businesses are saying, we can't run as a business if we can't keep our Paladin bins 500 metres away from your own business. But they're not managing those bins, and they do attract fly tipping. So I think that's our first problem, is we've got to get Paladin bins off of the highway. It's not going to be easy to do that, as we know from Cornhill, but somehow we need to re-educate people. I go back to Councillor Crittenden's...
Councillor, can we try and bring it back to the summer season and how we've done over the summer? We've sort of gone into general waste cuts. We can always ask Councillor Elvin to come back again in the next few months and talk about
things build up in the summer. So I'll go back to, people will fly tip greater stuff in the summer because it's hot and they don't want to keep it in the house. So if I look at Helen Crittenden's point is, our bins are so our normal waste bins, our public waste bins are being used. So I can name Nelson Crescent, Spencer Square, the Queen Street car park, Government Acre. They're all being used by households. I do go through it if I can find an envelope. You know, I'm relentless at reporting these things. But there's no signage on these bins to say they shouldn't be used for household waste. So how do we as councillors, so I've named those bins, what we really need is a sticker on the side saying this is not for household waste. So that may help. I think a pool of our own staff to try and reduce the use of agency staff is really good, and I like the idea of trying to create a pool of our own staff. I taught in a school and we struggled to get staff, so we used to get some of our staff that left to become our pool of staff because we wanted to reduce the agency costs as well. But I know it's a different scenario, but have we also, because you mentioned sickness was a real problem, which was a real problem in the school I worked in. It's a different scenario, but it's still sickness. It still pushed our budget over where we wanted to be. So we anonymously enabled staff through a reporting system to tell us if there is why they're going sick and if there's anything we can do to help reduce sickness. I mean, so most of the guys walk 20 kilometres a day in all weathers, so of course the impact on their health and well-being is going to be much greater than somebody teaching in a school, although they haven't got 30 kids shouting at them. But so have we thought of anonymously providing a system where perhaps the workforce who are having to work in these conditions could suggest ways in which sickness could be reduced through improvements in whatever? I don't know.
I'm not quite sure where to start, really, or where to end. Thank you, Becky. On your last point, the answer to that is no. I wouldn't see that our officers would want things to be done surreptitiously or anything of that way. We've got rules, regulations, and that's for our senior managers to manage. I think as far as oh, sorry, that's me trying to get out. I think as far as what you said, Becky, is I can't remember any of it, but I agree with you. There's lots of things that we should be able to do, but there's stuff that is there with our enforcement team. We're just talking to Matt, and really maybe that's something that as part that we should look at. And we need to talk with the directors of the corporate management team as to whether we have an enforcement officer within the waste team who can go around. But it still means that you and residents have to report it. And I think, you know, we're not just going to go around and looking in every bin, a bit like your good self. Yeah, so I'm shutting up now. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Scobie.
Thanks, Chair. I think it's clear that a problem that we used to have around the summer season has been gripped effectively and is now a positive. And having been down on the beach for a lot of the summer, you can see that. And so a lot of credit has got to go to the people that have done that, and something that was a problem area is now a positive. However, you knew there was going to be a however. That has come at a cost to the council, which has been talked about, and I completely take your point that the budget needs to be given, because it's not appropriate to not give the budget and then just take it out of reserves anyway. And I'd be interested in the view from our finance guru if how the auditors would look at that if you're putting a cost in there that you're not putting in your budget but has now repeated for 2 years, because this is not just now it's a problem, it was $1 million last year. So how that repetition may be picked up with the auditors, that's sort of one question. But sort of linked to that is, why are we only talking about this now? That's the first time I think I've heard anyone at this council say that we can't afford to run the services that we need to. I can't remember your exact phrase that you said in the presentation, but there was a comment saying we just don't simply have the resources to do the summer season. Nobody's ever said that. Why are we at this point where we've had $1 million overspend last year, and this year it's somewhere between 600 to 800,000. That's the first time somebody's putting their hand up and saying that. And this isn't necessarily a point for this committee, but one I'll certainly be picking up in governance and audit, because this should be on the risk register. And the fact that isn't is a process failing. On the risk register, a severe risk is something that's defined as being a financial loss or overspend greater than 500k. We have several other risks on it. Why is the overspend related to this area not on the risk register? Something that we're checking. It's a failing on that, and there's other areas. This isn't just for you, Councillor, but I know sort of this may feel like I'm poking holes at you, because obviously we had this conversation last week as well. But it's something that I'm very worried about, because if we've got processes where we're setting a budget where we know it's incorrect and we're not stating that's really concerning, and we can't have this happen for a third year in a row. So I don't know what happens with this budget setting process, but more money needs to be found, because the improvements are stark and much appreciated by everyone on the panel and residents, but we can't keep taking money out of our reserves. And as my first question, I don't know if you financially can before an auditor says, actually, we consider that to be a spend that's got to be in your budget in the first place. I don't know how long you can do that for.
I think Mike wants to speak first, so I'll let Mike speak first before.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Scobie. I just wanted to just touch a bit more upon the work we're doing this year about making sure that the service is efficient and that we minimise our overspend by tackling things. And we talked about this, I think, at the last OSP, about particularly tackling sickness. Our sickness absence rate is too high. We are having regular monthly meetings to address the things that we can do to bring down that agency cost, that forecast agency overspend. One of those is tackling sickness absence. Another is making sure that we have the right level of agency and the right level of of establishment staff, of TDC staff, because it's slightly cheaper to employ council staff than to bring agency in. So we need to get that level right so that we're not spending more on agency staff than we need to. I understand the points about increasing budget and things, but what's really important is that we make sure that we're delivering the most efficient service that we can for the budget before we start thinking about increasing the budget. We've got to do that work to make sure we can't get anything more out of the budget that we've got, I think, before looking at whether we need to increase it or not. And this is against the backdrop of understanding the overspend that we had last year and the impact that had on reserves, and making sure that we're doing our very best to avoid a further impact on revenue budget in future years and impact on reserve in future years. So everything we're doing now around reducing the agency overspend forecast, and it's coming down. I mean, it was Q1, it was reported at 800,000. It's now around 700,000, to year end. Everything we're doing is about trying to make sure that we can deliver things as close as possible to budget without having to increase it. So, it's tough because of all the pressures that we have on us during the summer, but the focus is very much on efficiency, I think.
Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Chair. Effectively, Mike's just covered off a lot of the issues in terms of the reason that the budget's out is for a lot of the reasons that Mike has just indicated. So when we set the budget, we wouldn't have fundamentally said that the budget was miles out in terms of service delivery. There are a number of things that have created a situation where it's gone out of kilter. I think we've talked about the fact that it's gone from 800,000 to 700,000, but it's actually gone from the £1 million that it was over £1 million last year in terms of agency and overtime. So it's actually come down by 300,000 already in relation to the work that's been undertaken. And that isn't including delivering the piece of work that needs to be able to reduce the sickness. As Mike has just sort of alluded to, agency staff cost around 11% more than a base establishment employee, just because that's the way that it's gone over the years in terms of salaries and so on and so forth. If we can manage down the sickness rate, there's several 100,000 that would automatically come out of that spend as a result of just managing down the sickness rate. I don't believe that the actual budget, and I'm slightly probably in disagreement with what Steve was saying to some extent, I don't think the budget is miles out in terms of if we deliver those efficiencies, whether we can achieve what we've been achieving within that amount of money. But there are some significant pieces of work that are currently underway to make sure that we are looking at, when we set the budget for 26-27, it is realistic and sustainable in terms of service delivery. So looking at the things like that are outliers, so extending the summer season, the issues with closing toilets, those come at a cost over and above the base budget. If we can manage those down and look at alternatives, I think I'm reasonably comfortable that we could come in. But you are right, it's not that audit would look at it from a value for money perspective and say the Section 151 officer has effectively agreed that the budget is manageable, sustainable and deliverable within those sums. It wasn't. So we can't, as you say, these pieces of work need to be undertaken so that we're comfortable with where we set the 26-27 budget.
One related other point I wanted to make, which is I'm not going to pretend that I know how local government reorganisation is going to impact the council. I don't think any of us know. But one thing from mergers and acquisitions within businesses, and this is effectively merging of councils, is that all the stats show your attrition rates, so staff leaving and sickness levels, go up substantially. And it's logical, isn't it? People are feeling uncertain. They don't know what organisation they're going to work for. Managers move on. There's going to be a bit of a brain drain. People may start getting pulled into the new unitary. So I do not think, for this budget coming up in next year, you can assume that these costs that you've got for covering off people being sick and on holiday are necessarily going to come down, and they actually even go up. And that's not an assumption I've heard from anyone around attrition rates. It's not something that's built into any of the risks that we're talking about here, is around the fact that this could actually go the opposite way. The same with other services. We're talking about, we feel like we can manage the risk and we've got these plans in place to bring this down, but there are outside forces here that could impact us and cause huge amounts of financial damage. So I think some work needs to take place within this planning, if it hasn't done already, about what local government reorganisation and effectively merging councils could do to attrition rates, because I think they'll push them up and cost a lot of money.
But thanks for that, Councillor Scobie, but you use the word assumption, and that's what it is. You know, you're assuming. We could assume anything that might happen. We could assume how we're going to operate. We can assume, but I think, as was said earlier, you know, none of us have gone through local government reorganisation before, and I think that we can look at other authorities that have gone through that process and learn from that, and I think that is that's what the Chief Executive and the leader's already doing. But how that's going to impact on us financially, or as you say, in relation to staff, obviously we have got to keep doing what we do until May 2028. We've got to do what we're doing, and that the money that we have has got to be used to carry out everything that we can for our residents. And so apart from that, I think you can't really assume anything. I think you just got, it's an open door, and I'm only going to push it slightly, and that's all for now. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bright.
Thank you for your report, Steve. I know it was a summer cleansing review, but you had mentioned the leaf collection trial, and I was just wondering if that was a success last autumn, and now obviously we're coming into autumn, there's lots of leaves on the ground. Will we be doing that again in Broadstairs? Have we got any plans to roll it out, or was it not very successful? And also, will there be dedicated leaf picking patrols going around? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, yes, the short answer is, that we will have the staff out again looking at the leaf fall in the tree areas. You don't know that yet, but that is probably what will happen. And yes, if there's a demand for locally for the bins to be put in their garden like we did last year, and for residents to come and fill them up, then we will empty them. So.
How can we get that message out? Because I know I'd like a bin. I'd like to clear up some leaves. Thanks.
Thanks for that. For both your points, the additional leafing staff that we're talking about is kind of exactly the sort of thing that we've been debating in the last 10 minutes or so. That's additional pressure that's outside of what we've got budgeted. So any additional leafing staff will come at an additional cost that will feed into any potential overspend. It's one of the things that we're debating and discussing at these monthly meetings about how we can manage that and find ways of managing that at limited additional cost, or as Matt likes to say, zero additional cost. In terms of the leaf trial, it was a very small one, but it was a really good success, and we even got on the BBC News about it. And I got calls from previous colleagues saying what a great idea it was. The traditional route of doing this sort of thing is for me to take it to CMT and then go to Cabinet, then announce it, Steve's kind of jumping the gun a little bit there, but
What I'm here for.
we need to, in terms of the governance of that sort of decision and getting the message out, we should have that wrapped up in the next couple of weeks, because we need to before all the leaves are on the floor anyway. So watch this space, I think it's safe to say.
Is that something that we need to recommend from here, that Cabinet look at, or is that happening anyway?
We can put it in as a recommendation.
You can make a recommendation if you want.
If you wish to make that recommendation.
Would you like to recommend something?
Yeah, why not? I'd like to recommend that we do the leaf collection, the voluntary leaf collection again, and just...
Can you recommend that it's extended to other places?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the resource is. I don't know about resources and things, but certainly in Broadstairs, I'm going to fight for that.
I'm conscious this obviously is a public forum and it's not been officially approved and ratified yet, but I would like to think that we can extend it further than just Broadstairs.
So, Councillor Bright, do you want to recommend that, and I'll put it in the minutes that you recommended it, if we've got a seconder for that? I've got a seconder there. A proposal and a seconder, proposed by Councillor Bright, seconded by Councillor Crittenden. And we'll recommend that to Cabinet. And do we all agree? We all agree. Perfect. Okay. Councillor Davis.
Just thinking back onto the bins, particularly town centre bins, which, I mean, I've seen the ones in Ramsgate, I'm sure we all have. The ones at the bottom of the high street outside Poundland, madness. They've been immaculate at 6 in the morning and by 7 o'clock overflowing, and it is people clearing out of weekend joints and Airbnbs and so on. Without incurring too much cost, it just struck me that one of the issues we've had is people with Airbnb swapping from from council tax onto business rates. But of course that gives a record of those smaller properties, because the problem with the short stayers is that they will, the people causing the mess aren't necessarily checking out on rubbish day. So, you know, can we blame them? The duty is actually on the property owner. But it strikes me that because a lot of them have flipped from council tax to business rates, that would give us the ability to quite simply audit those that are on business rates and what their commercial waste contract is, because if they're business rates payers, then they should have a commercial waste contract, and I'll guarantee there's probably an awful lot that haven't even considered it, let alone done it, and that could potentially bring in, a solution to that.
Yeah, I think the business rates are, I think, as Matt's just said, are very small, and they get zero rate.
I'm not talking about what they yield, I'm saying though that identifies people that should have a waste contract that haven't.
Yeah, well, that's if they pay business rates.
But whether the liability that they may be exempt from because they're below the threshold doesn't exempt them from the responsibility to have a waste contract, because they would have a bill even if it was mitigated. So it could identify a potential source. Just throw it in there.
Well, so they're not paying any council, not paying nothing to Thanet.
I'm not talking about what they're paying. No,
but yes, so they're not paying business rates because a lot of them are zero rated, so they're paying for nothing.
But even if they're zero rated, they're the same as a shop or anybody else, because it's also the shops without a product, often estate agents and administrative businesses, that are the problem with the bins, because they don't generate enough rubbish to sort of fill a black bag. So. But as I say, it just struck me that the issue with the Airbnbs, and they are the ones that dump it on the wrong day, could be addressed. And also, I think one of my colleagues behind me here mentioned about stickers on the bins as well, and perhaps the town centre ones having something saying, you know, this is street waste, not domestic waste, might deter a few.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just respond briefly to it, because this point is an item on the annex on one of the future items on the tourism update, the tourism review update. And I checked this recently. The legislation currently allows Airbnb type lets to use domestic bins, and the point in that update is that obviously we're going through the household waste and recycling improvement project, which means that every property, that's whether it's Airbnb or otherwise, will have all the correct receptacles. So they'll have, effectively blue bin waste, residual waste, food, paper and card. So at least that will afford more opportunity for people to recycle the right things and have the right waste types. But as it currently stands for Airbnb, they can use domestic bins under current legislation.
Thanks, Mike.
It doesn't seem correct that they can pay nothing in tax and be allowed to use the services.
Confirms the issues we've raised about them, because if you start compounding all of these small elements, suddenly it's bricks in a wall, and it's where a lot of the problem's coming from, I think.
Okay, does anybody else any questions? Councillor.
So because there's 3 Airbnbs on my road, one has their own commercial waste bin. In fact, if there's an issue, we just text the owner who doesn't live here and he sorts it out. And the cleaning company deal with that. But the other 2, they put seagull bags out. So if they're using the same system as everybody else, do they have to pay their council tax? And I wouldn't know whether these pay their council tax either, because the owners are sometimes back and then they're not. So it's, we've got no way of telling.
Sorry, to be eligible, to be able to switch from council tax to business rates, so we don't know whether those individual properties are or aren't paying council tax or business rates. In order to be able to switch, they've got to be a registered Airbnb that is utilised more than 140 days a year specifically for that purpose. Otherwise, they're not eligible for business rates. So if somebody's effectively living there for most of the time, they'll be paying council tax, not eligible for business rates. So they'll be all right.
It's a complex situation. Okay, if that's all done, I can thank you, Steve, and Matt.
Chair, can I just say, I just want to publicly thank our staff who worked terrifically hard in the summer. I do know that for the majority of the public, they're very grateful for what they do and the hours that they do, and working through what they have to put up with as well. So I just want to publicly thank them on behalf of the council. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think we all agree with that, and we'll minute that as well. Okay. Moving on to item number... do we all note that presentation, please? Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 6, review of the recommendations coming from scrutiny reviews. Over to Nick.
Thank you, Chair. So, since 2024, the ONS panel has formed 3 scrutiny reviews. These are for the Tourism Working Party, another review on external grant funding, and the Youth Provision Review. This report focuses on the former 2, so tourism and external grant funding, and we will bring another report to the next meeting on the youth provision, and we will potentially see if we can do something with coastal waste as well. So, I say it is best practice to review the recommendations coming out of scrutiny and how many have been implemented, and that is certainly something we'll be looking to do in future in a much more structured way that will help the panel work out what has been agreed and what has not been agreed, and how to monitor those, which will also make it easier for officers to provide members with this information. So I'm not going to go through everything line by line, you'll be pleased to know, but just a few key things. So from the tourism review, all bay signage was replaced in 23-24, consistent with coastline standards. The recommendation regarding incident management zoning using the flags was implemented on Margate Main Sands during the 24 summer holiday period. Coastal enforcement officers were trained to accredited levels that meant they could issue FPNs. Dedicated coastal enforcement officers issued 59 FPNs and over 1,300 educational interventions over the summer, this summer. Phase 1 of the refurbishment of the toilets is complete, with 10 repairs to public toilets being completed last year and additional repairs being completed this year. New permanent toilet facilities, as was mentioned at the previous item, are being planned for construction in 26, and that will enable us to remove the need for temporary toilets at Margate Clock Tower. 25 new permanent bin housings were installed along the coastline. Cabinet did not pick up the recommendations about the 2-minute litter picks or about additional levies for council tax on second homes or a tourism tax. So moving on to the external grant funding review, we now have a community development manager in post. We've also got funding for a permanent community development officer. We have a new Community Matters e-newsletter, which has been started by the community development manager. The voluntary community sector forum is planned to start after the Community Champions Conference in spring next year. We have new contract procedure rules that now reflect the duty to consider social value, and they were adopted in earlier this year. We continue to host the UK SBF Partnership Group. Grant agreements are now signed electronically, and we are still working towards the VCSE compact, but that work has yet to be completed. Obviously, there are still a number of things that are outlined in the annexes of work that is in progress or yet to complete, but this is a further, we can easily do another further review in 6 to 9 months' time to make sure that all of the outstanding things are either brought to a close or signed off. Happy to field any questions or would like some support from other officers that are here to help answer any questions that you may have.
I'm going to come to Councillor Austin first, because she was chair of one of those reviews.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Nick. That's these summaries are really helpful. It's really good to be able to go through and look at what the recommendations are. I suspect that there are differences in interpretation about some of the feedback, but it's really helpful to have it set out like this. Certainly from the point of view of the review that I was responsible for, the appointment of Nicola Wood in the community development role has made a huge difference to the relationship with the voluntary sector. She's done an enormous amount of good work, and there's lots of great stuff happening there, and I know there are really strong relationships. I think there's two things I'd like to say about it. There's that we could perhaps be thinking about working on. The first one is that relationship sits within the regeneration team. It would be great to have broader range of officers brought in there, because we have different officers who deal with different voluntary sector organisations under, for example, housing or planning or the neighbourhoods team looking at community safety and so on, and it would be great if we could get a group of officers working together there. And I do appreciate the context that obviously Councillor Scobie highlighted earlier, that we're moving into a different setup, but if we can get our relationships right now, it will be a strong basis to work from in the future. And the second thing I was going to say is it's a great shame that it's going to take more than 18 months to set up the voluntary sector forum, because voluntary sector chief execs and so on who contributed to our review a year ago were desperate to have that going as soon as possible, and I'm really sorry it's taken so long. But I have to commend Ms Wood for the huge amount of excellent work she's done. Thank you.
Councillor Wing, your agenda.
Can I pick up on individual items? Is that okay? It's signage and jet skis, signage on beaches. I mean, I too really love this format because it's nice and easy and quick. You can go through it quite quickly. And I think there may be signage on the places where jet skis can enter the water. So I think it's in Ramsgate, it's the harbour. But there's no signage, or there doesn't appear to be signage on places where they might gain access or previously gained access that tells them they can't gain access and they need to go to these sites. Because we, again, this year have serious problems on the West Undercliff Beach, and I think you've had on the eastern side of Ramsgate. I'm not sure about the other areas, but it would be really useful if we had some sort of information, polite information that says you can't, and they lifted the jet ski over the barrier, you can't put your jet ski into the water here. Here are the sites where you can formally. as long as you've got a key holder. So I think the signage has improved, but it would just really help us maybe try and stop the odd jet skier thinking they can gain access on beaches with slipways, even if there is a barrier.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Wing. I think that's something perhaps we could talk about, away from here, exactly where those areas are, because I agree we need to make it absolutely clear if we're not doing that. I mean, through the water users group, it's clear to our members where they can and can't launch. And as you say, Ramsgate Harbour is one of the locations. You mentioned about one being lifted over. We know that there are new technology. There are sort of lightweight and collapsible jet skis that people are using now and putting together, and that means that they can get them to places that you can't get a conventional jet ski because they're just too big and heavy to move around. But I'm happy to talk out of here about whether there's more we can do in terms of putting signs up to make it clearer. But certainly our water user group members, it is very clear to them where they can and can't use jet skis.
The ones I've seen, it's been people arriving, it's not our water users. I think it's outside people who just assume it's a slipway and they can go there.
Scobie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've made this point before, but I'm going to make it again. This is 2 of our working parties, and we've got 46 recommendations. And there's another 2 that have got to come onto there. So we're talking about, as a panel, we've given, nearly 100 recommendations. And I think some of the good stuff that's in here is undermined by some recommendations that I don't think should be part of that. Some that we don't have any power over, like tourism tax, the much discussed tourism tax, internationally renowned tourism tax, other areas that we don't really have any control of and realistically don't need budget for, like a park and ride, but also some recommendations that are suitably vague that, it's almost impossible to know what action it has, like build equal partnerships or commit to openness and transparency, things that anyone could sign up to, but they're not really measurable things that you can put in there. So it speaks to what I've said in the past, that this may be our last working party, there may be more, who knows, but it should be really, really focused, give a small number of really good recommendations rather than trying to come up with the biggest list. And I'm thinking you might come up with half a dozen good recommendations and maybe some low-hanging fruit that can be small things that don't have any cost. And we certainly shouldn't be putting things in there that we don't have any jurisdiction over, that's going to cost a lot of money that there isn't budget for, and things that are vague, that don't really have an actual target or action behind it.
That's Quentin.
I just wanted to ask Mike to include me on the jet ski location stuff. Like Councillor Wing, I've got 6 years worth of negotiations on this, so thank you.
Councillor Austin.
Can I just pick up the tourist tax? Because the recommendation on the tourist tax was if and when it becomes legally possible for the council to do so, Cabinet may wish to consider the possibility of. It was the most tentative and carefully worded recommendation, and people, the press obviously, but members of this group are picking it up as if we as a group had said under Councillor Britcher's leadership, we want this to happen tomorrow. We never said that, and it's infuriating to hear it keeping on being picked up to the detriment of the rest of the report where there were some really useful recommendations.
Yeah, I agree. I think the whole publicity around it got a bit out of hand.
Yeah, and I accept that, but it's not the only recommendation in there that shouldn't have been in there in the first place, because it's not achievable. It's not something we have power over. It's not something we have money for. It's these reports are our opportunity to flag up issues to Cabinet about improvements, and I'm not sure we're helping our case by putting on an annual basis nearly 100 recommendations, every 2 years putting nearly 100 recommendations in front of Cabinet and officers. I think it just dilutes what we're trying to achieve when if we came in with a small number of really good recommendations of things that we can do now and actually have control over. I take your point, Councillor Austin, around the tourism tax, but if we don't have power over it now, what was the point in including it? But it's not practical, that's the point.
We're not here to...
Yeah, okay, but the wider point, I think, has been made. Thank you, Chair.
I think we just had some very wide wide subjects, and I think, you know, we're just councillors, we're just putting ideas forward, and all the ideas went to CMT, went to Cabinet, everybody agreed that they were valid recommendations, and they're the ones that got taken forward. And I think there were some very good recommendations, like you said, some of them probably completely unimplementable, but we are where we are. Who else had their hand up? Nobody.
Just wanted to say a bit, which I should have done at the start, which is a big thanks to Emily in my team for pulling that together, because it has been, and to all heads of service and other CMT members, it's been a big effort to put that together. And as I say, hopefully doing things differently moving forward should make that a lot easier for everybody concerned when we come to do this in another cycle, definitely.
It's all a big learning curve as well, isn't it? But we are where we are.
Just the time when we get abolished.
Yeah. But there's been some good pieces. I think there's been some good pieces of work. I think some of these scrutiny reviews have been very good pieces of work. I don't want to take anything away from that. And thanks to Nick and Emily. Okay, moving on to item number... Oh, sorry, would all members note that report? Okay, yeah, moving on to item number 7, the corporate performance approach and indicators. Am I calling on you, Colin, for this?
You are. Thank you, Chair. But just to say, it will be that we're going to be abolished, but that doesn't mean to say we can't take our good practice into the new council, which I think we're all going to work on as much as we can. So the work in the report you've got in front of you has been overseen by Hannah Thorpe, who's been ably assisted by her own glamorous assistant, Richard Knight. If you've not met Richard, he's our policy officer. Hannah can't be here this evening, so I said I'd introduce a report for her. So we're here to discuss a crucial element of our corporate governance, which is our proposed new performance management framework. This framework is designed to provide clear, consistent oversight of our performance across key council services, ensuring transparency and accountability to our residents. It also demonstrates that we're prioritising the areas that matter most to them. Following its approval by Cabinet on Thursday, the 25th of September, this framework is now presented to you for your consideration. It outlines how we intend to manage and report on our organisational performance, proposing 40 corporate performance indicators that offer a strategic overview of our progress against the 5 priorities within our corporate plan. And they're also designed, although this is obviously a bit of a subjective judgment, they're designed to be indicators that we think people outside the council might want to measure us against. And that'll be in many ways a view that you might agree or disagree with. So while these indicators don't cover every single service, they do provide, I hope, a robust picture of our overall direction. Quarterly performance reports will be published for regular review and challenge. We expect the first of those to be in November, alongside an annual performance summary report. The annual report will not only demonstrate our progress over the past year, but it will also incorporate resident perception data from our annual survey, reflecting satisfaction levels with our key services. To ensure we maintain a strong and consistent understanding of our performance over time, the report also recommends reporting against a stable set of indicators. We don't want to switch them around too frequently. If, however, new data becomes available which could improve the level of transparency with the delivery of the corporate plan, these will be proposed to Cabinet for potential inclusion in future reports. And furthermore, as your members probably know, the government is working on a new local government outcomes framework, which was recently out for consultation, and will review our proposed indicators to ensure full alignment with the required metrics. And there'd be an advantage as well in that most councils will then coordinate their indicators together on the same issues measured in the same way. That not only allows us to measure our own performance, but also to compare our performance with others. So the panel's insights and comments this evening are very welcome as we move forward with this important initiative. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Colin. Members, any questions? Councillor Scobie.
I was just going to say I really like this, and I think it would have been obviously valuable to have it earlier, but you get to it when you get to it, so credit where that's due. I was looking at it and going, I really think something should be in there about cybersecurity, and went off down a whole rabbit hole. I couldn't work out which one would come out, and I just thought, okay, fair enough, 40 is probably enough. I guess the challenge is to get that on one page now, because a massive organisation will have that as like the back thing that you're looking and driving performance, but then we'll have a one-page balanced scorecard or something like that you can then show performance, because I've, as a layperson, I sort of struggle very hard to sort of work through that and deal with that.
Yeah.
And at some point, surely there's going to be a one-page summary that we can look at and go, okay, we're green in most areas, or we're looking good in most areas.
So what we're looking at, it's because obviously this is a relatively new exercise. What we're going to be doing is in the quarterly reporting, trying to work out what works first of all, and we're having all the information in the background. That's being poured through into some kind of dashboard. What we're intending is for this in each indicator to have something from the dashboard sort of referred to within the narrative reporting, so to sort of allow us to have that oversight, the reader to have the oversight early on, and then as we go forward to see the trends and progression and so on. So that is broadly the intention. How it sort of develops will to some extent rely very much on feedback from you and your colleagues as well. Across council, but that's the intention. So we have something that's understandable fairly early on, and then we can improve it going forward.
Councillor Green.
Yeah, I welcome this too. I think it's a great step forward. Right through the targets is the use of percentages, like percentages of major planning applications determined in 13 weeks. Percentages are only value if the actual number hasn't changed much. So could we have the actual number as well as the percentage?
Thank you, Chair. We can certainly have a look at that, although I think that percentages are applied nationally by government about the way in which the planning service operates, and to allow you to consistently measure your own performance against that of other councils. So I think in that particular occasion we probably mirrored what the government suggests is the way in which we should measure ourselves on planning, but we'll get it looked at, and if that's not the case then we can possibly change it. Right.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. And again, very welcome initiative, and it's good to see the areas for review. I'm a little bit concerned and if not confused by how I don't think some of these are robust enough, in that, for example, and as I say, it may not be by design, recycling, I'll give you an example, it doesn't actually have a target rate, and yet I know that Matt works on percentages and is measured on his percentage effectiveness, and in fact that affects our future income, I believe. So to have our corporate reporting just saying trend seems a bit of an anomaly to me. There are several like that are quantifiable, that I think are quantifiable and could be targeted to make them a more defined measure rather than just putting trend. However, there are areas that we do not have control over, so therefore, a trend, it is more trend related, let's say. For example, the number of enforcement actions for tackling incidents of fly tipping. We've got no control over how many fly tips there are, so that could vary quite, and depends on the size of the fly tip, because a fly tip can be a carrier bag or a wood full of rubbish, obviously. So as I say, I think it's a very good scheme, and anything that gives you that, well, it's PRAM, isn't it? Precise, realistic, agreed and measurable, which is how you but housing, interestingly enough, we've got a lot of defined figures, for instance, empty homes return to use. Other departments, we don't seem to have pinned it down the same. So I just think we need to perhaps look at a better quantification of what the target is on some of these areas. So if I could recommend that as something that needs a further degree of looking at.
Councillor Austin, did you wave?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with Councillor Davis about the things that have got trend against something. There's some things there that we could pick up and look at in a bit more detail and set ourselves some targets, as I know some officers already have some very challenging targets in with regard to some of those. But generally, as I've said at Cabinet, I wax lyrical about this. I think it's excellent, and I do think we have some excellent practice, as Councillor Davies has just highlighted, for example, in tenant and leaseholder services, of the ways of measuring, but also the ways of presenting that information on a dashboard that is clear and simple. And I think the crucial thing here is obviously we want this information as councillors and as officers, but we also want to have information that we can present to our residents in ways that are simple and clear and don't involve the jargon of corporate priorities, but actually do the "you said we did." You know, this is a thing we're working on, and here's where we've got to with it, and can you help us to do it better by, etc. Those kinds of things. So I think it's a really good step forward, and very pleased to see it and do what we can to support it. Thank you.
Any further questions? Want to come back?
A couple of things for me, and I think Richard might want to add. Just to say yes, absolutely about the dashboard, but picking up another point. What we're hoping to do is to correlate these indicators with the tenant and leasehold service indicators and also budget monitoring. Because I think we all agree as officers that monitoring your budget is a type of performance. And so if we can pull it together, quite often performance is either helped or not helped by the budget you've got available. So actually putting them together should be good. Absolutely, I think about trends and targets. We're starting. This is the beginning of a journey, I think. Recycling, I mean, I have to say I've been there before. What you do is you set yourself a target and then you fail miserably. Of course, some stuff is out of your hands on recycling. It does depend on quantity of waste and all those kind of things. Collecting leaves is actually a measure of recycling, which I know is why we're doing it, but even so. And what I'm anxious not to do is to set a target where we're not absolutely sure we'll be able to achieve it. So starting with a trend and converting to a target feels to me to be the right approach. Yeah, Richard, did you want to add anything?
Yes, and sorry for coming in for just wanted to say to Councillor Austin about the you said we did. That's
oh, a bit of space.
Farther away.
Test. That's exactly what we want to do. That's the intention. For bring it all back to the corporate plan 24-28, so that we can go out to the public and say, you know, here's what you wanted and here's what we tried to deliver.
Okie dokie. Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Richard, for that. Okay, moving on. Oh, there's no. We just asked to note the report. Okay, moving on to item 8, which is the forward plan. Obviously, if there's anything anybody wants to say, Councillor Scobie.
So I probably should have brought this up earlier, but all the fun over the minutes, I think I forgot. Can we ask Councillor Whitehead to come to a future meeting to talk about the homeless strategy? Because I think there's some good stuff happening, which obviously we've heard about from reports, but it's one of the biggest risks the council's got. It's one of the biggest overspends in the budget. So and I understand that we're starting to get a grip on numbers, but I think it would be good for us to get some assurance and hear some more information from that. So maybe December or January might be good to hear from Councillor Whitehead.
We will definitely send out an invite. I can't remember who we asked for next month. Can you remember? About the parking strategy. Yeah, okay. Yeah, cool. We'll definitely invite. Okay, so nothing else, just to note that report? Excellent. Okay, that concludes the business for tonight's meeting, and I declare this meeting closed at 8:45. Thanks all for coming.